In this video, we'll be talking about the polygon column reinforcement macro, which is basically used to place rebars in polygon columns. Of course, it is also used to place rebars in rectangular columns as well, because they're also polygons. But before we start that, a few words about the strategy you might be using to model your columns. Now, if it's a multi-story building, you could be modeling your columns separately like this, which is possible. Or you could be, if the section is not changing at every story, you could be modeling it as a single column which goes all the way. That would be your choice. The difference would be that if you model them separately, then you would get a different column marked. For this one would be, let's say it would be C1, this would be maybe C2, maybe C3, or depending on how you've set up your numbering. But this one will basically be given a single assembly number. Now, obviously, if the section is changing from one story to the next, then you have to model them separately. But sometimes the section doesn't change for a few stories, so you will have both these options. And whatever the option may be, you will find certain parameters in the polygon column reinforcement macro, which you can set to get the desired result. Now, let's begin by opening up the settings of the polygon column reinforcement macro. And in COMOSYS, you know that if you press the shift button and then click on this one while keeping the shift pressed, it will open up the dialog box and you can make your settings over here. Now, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 tabs to begin with. But just as a recap, this macro will basically create the longitudinal bars of the column. It will create the stirrups in the column. It will also create the cross ties if needed in the column. And then it also has the capability to create starter bars at the bottom if there's a foundation and you want starter bars coming out of the foundation. Then you can use the same macro to create starter bars, or you can create them separately as well. But the macro, the polygon column reinforcement macro, allows you to create starter bars as well. So it basically, in a nutshell, it creates 4 types of rebars: the longitudinal ones, the stirrups, the cross ties, and the starter bars. Now, to create the stirrups, this little checkbox over here needs to be checked. And to create the cross ties, this one needs to be checked. And to create the starter bars, which go into the foundation, if you come to the starter tab over here, then put starters, this one needs to be checked. We will begin with the longitudinal rebars. So to understand them properly, we will just turn these off, and this one we can also turn it off from here, so that it doesn't put any starter bars, no stirrups, no cross ties, just the longitudinal bars, so that we can focus on those. Now, before we get into the longitudinal bars, just a quick word on the general tab over here. We were in the figures tab over here, but now if you go to the general tab, just make sure, because you want to follow what you'll want to create, what I'm doing as well. So don't make sure that the auto tick is unticked, and for when you untick it, then it allows you to change these. And now you can make sure that this one is also unticked. So all these we will see one by one. What does exclude end region mean, and what does apply splices at intermediate joints and generate cross ties manually, etc. At the moment, we want all this to be unticked, and to be able to untick all that, make sure that the auto is also unticked. So after that brief information on that, let's return to the figure and talk about the longitudinal bars. Now, the longitudinal bars, the most important input is the diameter and the spacing. So right now it says 16 millimeter diameter and a spacing of 250 millimeters. Now this is a general spacing for all. So any polygon column will have multiple sides, right? So for example, this is an L-shaped column which is drawn in the dialog box. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. This setting over here, diameter of 16 for with a spacing of 250 will be valid for all sides, right? So it says put phi 16 bars at 250 millimeters on this side, on that side, on this side, on this side, on this side, and on this side. And then we'll talk about how we can actually change. So let's just begin with that. This one is these three I will talk about later. So let me clear this up. Make sure you've got nothing over here, and just phi 16 at 250. Let's say you can make something similar to this. We'll talk about the longitudinal reinforcement data over there. There's a lot of detail to talk about over there, but for the moment, let's start off with diameter and spacing. This is the general thing. We've turned everything else off. We don't want to put stirrups. We don't want to put cross ties. We don't want to put starters. And we just want longitudinal bars, and that also at 250 millimeters phi 16 bars. So with that, we just say apply, and we say okay. And now the command is ready to be used. So let's try and use it on this column over here. This column is 500 by 500, and we'll try to use what we just did. So let's click on this one. It asks us to select a polygon column. Let's select this one, and then we just right click to confirm our selection. When we do that, we see that it has created certain bars. Let's look at it from the top. Let's see where it is. Yeah, there it is. This is the bar. This is the column we were entering the numbers for, and we see that it has created bars, and the default spacing was 250. Let's measure this. So let's measure the distance between this one, and we see that it's 184 millimeters, and this one is also 184 millimeters, and then this one is 184 as well. Now we asked for 250, but it is not 250. What does that mean? It means that the number over there, let's press M twice. So you can go back into the macro by selecting any rebar and pressing M twice. I'll explain that because normally it will leave surface macros. So if you press M once, you will access this surface macro. But if you press M twice, you will access the original column reinforcement macro. And then if you press enter, the column macro dialog box will open. Now this 250 was the guideline, but obviously with the column of size 500, if you put, and you have your clear cover as well, this is the clear cover from the sides. So let's say that's 50. So that you got about 400 or something, whatever millimeters left roughly. So 250, if it's exact, they don't fit. If you put one over here and then one at 250, and then this one is smaller distance. So what this means is that do not exceed this number, whatever the closest you can get, but it should be less than this number, right? So don't let's keep that in mind. 250 was the guideline input, but it ended up doing 184. So if we change this to, for example, 150, then this distance is about 400-ish. So let's see what it will happen. It's going to increase the bars a bit. So because to 150, it probably needs to make it 120 something or 130 something, and that's so this distance will be a guideline distance. Just keep that in mind. If we make it 100 and say apply, then once again the number of bars will change. So this will be a guideline spacing, and if we change the diameter, for example, make it 20, say apply, then the bars will get bigger. Now, if you notice something immediately, there is a color coding. There is a light blue color and there's a dark blue color. Basically, this is to tell you, because it puts rebars on each side of the polygon column. So it's if you notice, it's got these light blue ones for this side, And then for this side, it's got those dark blue ones. So the dark blue ones don't come to the corner because the corners are already occupied by this side. And then the third side is over here, which is fully populated. And the fourth side is once again partially populated because the middle three ones are there, and the start and the end rebars are not there, because otherwise you would have a duplication of rebars. Now, I mentioned that this input of spacing is for all four sides or all n sides, because this is a polygon column. But if you notice at the bottom, there are these diameters and spacing have got separate inputs as well. So normally, if you don't use these, this one and this one, then the diameter and the spacing is valid for all sides of the polygon. But if I were to use this input, for example, and if I were to say 50 millimeters, and just press apply, this one will override whatever is in the top one. If you enter anything over here, this one overrides that. So if I say apply, we will see a 50 millimeter spacing on all sides. But now the advantage I have over here is if I say 50 space 100, it means is put a spacing of 50 on the first side and then 100 in whatever is remaining. So the last 100 will keep continuing for the remaining side. So if I say apply now, you will see that this one was side 1. So another thing which this helps us with is realizing which side is side 1, which side is side 2, which side is side 3, and side 4. So right now I know that this is side 1 because this is 50 millimeter spacing, and I still don't know which one is side 2. This could be side 2, or maybe this is side 2. So for that I can put another 50 like this. 50, 50, and then 100, and then I will know that, okay, this is side 2. So this is side 1, this is side 2, and then this is 3 and 4 are back to 100. So that's an interesting way to actually change the spacings for each side separately, and you can use this very conveniently. Now let's bring it back to 50 just to see. Now the same thing can be done for diameters. So for example, if I were to say for side 1 use a diameter of 20, then for the other side use a diameter of 12, then back to 20 for the third side, and then back to 12 for the fourth side, then this will put 20 millimeter diameters on this side, then 12, and then 20 once again, and then 12 after that. Now let's play around with it a bit more. For this spacing, instead of 50, let me give it a large spacing. Let me give it a spacing like almost the same. This length is about 400 millimeters. Let me give it a spacing of 400, for example. Say OK. Now, if you notice, what happens is that the first side gets 2 because that's what 400 fits over there. The second side, which was the dark blue rebars, completely disappeared because they were eliminating their first and last rebars anyways. So there's no space for even one bar in the middle because that would reduce the spacing drastically. And the third side once again has these two, and then the fourth one disappears. So you will see occasionally the dark blue ones completely disappearing, and the reason for that is what you're seeing on the screen. So what if I wanted one bar in the middle as well? I would just do something like maybe 250 for the second side, and then back to 400 for the third side, and 250 for the last side. When I do that, we'll probably see these bars over here. Oh, so this is not enough. So yeah, that would mean if I want one over here as well, then this would need to be 250 as well. Sorry. So that means just saying 250 would get the job done. So we've got one bar in the middle. Now, what if I wanted the corner bars to be a certain diameter and these 4 bars to be a smaller diameter? In that case, I would need to do something like this. I would need to apply the 400 spacing so that I get only the corner bars, and then I can change my diameters to, let's say I want a 20 millimeter diameter for those. But then I can, one ability of the polygon column reinforcement macro is that you can apply it to the same column twice. So let's say I've got this done now, but I want these 4 bars now at a different diameter. and that would not be possible because you can't. This side is one diameter basically, and this side is one diameter. So I can't put two corner bars over there and with this diameter different. I need to do something else. What I can do is to apply the macro to the same column twice with different settings. But to do that, I have to explain to you what this parameter over here does, the one which says methods. If you notice, there's a little question mark next to it, and that's like a little help file. So if you click on it, it tells you that for each side, so there are 4 sides to this column, but for each side, you can specify a number, which could be 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So if I specify 0, it means no modification, just whatever the numbers dictate, whatever the spacing dictates, just fill up that side with that spacing. So 0 means no modification. 1 means delete the first and last reinforcement. So let's say, so let me just show it to you quickly. If I were to give it a smaller one like this, let's make it 100 so that we can see it more clearly. Now, this is the first side, this is the second side, this is the third side, this is the fourth side. It automatically does something actually, which it doesn't show when it's left blank as well. But what it's done is it's taken the first side and has left it as it is. But for the second side, it has done a modification of eliminating the first and last rebar. And for the third side, it leaves it as it is. And for the fourth side, it also eliminates the first and last rebar. So what it's actually doing is, if I open it up again, what it's doing is for the first side, it says no modification. So I'll write 0. Then for the second one, it wants the first and last rebar to be eliminated. So I'll write 1 for that. And then for the third side, I'll write 0 again. And for the fourth side, I'll write 1 again. So what it's actually doing is, it's doing 0, 1, 0, 1. That's what it's doing by default. If I do it, you will see that nothing changes. Even if it's left blank, it is doing a 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1 for all sides by default. But we can use this to our advantage. So let's do that. Let's remove this. By default, it's going to do the same thing. I want to put the corner, only the corner ones. So I increase the spacing to 400 like this. I want only the 4 corner ones. And now I want the middle ones, but with a different diameter. So what I'll do is I'll apply it like this. I'll apply OK. And then I'll go to my column macro again, press the Shift key, the new setting, go to my figure. And over here for the spacing, I will say 250, because 250 will provide 3 bars on each side. But that's not the only thing I'm going to do. I'm going to say a spacing of 250. But for the method, I'm going to say 1, which means delete first and last reinforcement for all lines. So all lines by default will have 3 rebars with this new spacing. 3 over here, 3 over here, 3 over here, and 3 over here. But if I say 1, 1, 1, and 1, what that means is, if you remember what was 1 was delete the first and last reinforcement. So I will delete the first and last reinforcement for all sides, which will leave me the middle reinforcement for all sides. So let me just change the diameter also, because we already had this one. So I want a diameter of 12 maybe. So if I say apply 12 millimeter diameter, okay, and now I can go to this one and select the column and right click. And now if you see, I've got my extra bars. For this side, I've got a 12 millimeter bar over here. For this side, I've got a 12 millimeter over here, a 12 millimeter over here, another 12 millimeter over here. But we've applied the polygon reinforcement macro twice, and we can apply it 10 times if you want to. So that's a convenient feature to have. You're not limited to applying this only once. You can apply it once, get the corner bars. You can apply it the second time to get the middle bars. If I were to, for example, go into this one, press MM twice, open it up again, go to the figure, and instead of the 250, if I make it 100 with this 1111 settings, which is going to eliminate the first and the last for all sides, it's going to basically fill up the middle section with more 12 millimeter bars. I can do 50 millimeter distance, for example, It's going to fill up, but the corner bars will be the larger diameter, which was the separate the other macro which I had applied. So let me bring it back to 250. So this is a nice way of having almost complete control over how you want your bars and your diameters spread out across the. Now let's talk about a few other things. So I've reset the column and I've let me go into the settings. What I've done is I've changed. I've just removed. I can even remove this because I want the same on all four sides, 250, and everything else is default. And let's just apply it. No stirrups, no cross ties, no starters. Just apply it. Select this one, right click, and we get our rebars. Now, if you notice, the rebars are the starting point is just ending over there like that, and the ending point is just ending at just before the column ends. And maybe we have another column on top of this. Maybe we have let's go into my concrete menu and column, and maybe we have another column sitting on top, and we want this the first column longitudinal bars to continue into the second column a bit, right? Now I'll show you other ways of doing it as well, but just explaining this particular thing. Now if I click on any of the bars, press M twice, enter, it will open up the dialog box. And if I go over here, so this was the longitudinal rebar input. We talked a bit about these, how we can basically achieve any kind of configuration which we want. But we didn't talk about this, this little button over here. And if I click on it, you see that it's got information about the start detail and the end detail. The start detail has to do with what happens to the bars at the bottom end, and the end detail has to do with what happens to the bar at the top. Now, since I want these bars to continue, I will just show you the options over there. If you're familiar with the surface macro, then the input is exactly the same as that, because it basically creates these longitudinal bars using surface macros on each side. So if I go to the end detail, you will see that this is the standard dialog box of the surface macro, if you're already familiar with that. And there's some details, so I would recommend anybody who hasn't studied the surface macro to first watch a video on the surface macro and understand these parameters. But right now I want to say that the end detail, the method of extension is currently by default set to do nothing, which means just go to the end and that's it, stop. But if I were to say, for example, to closest segment as the method of extension, and if I say OK and get out of the macro, you will see that the bars at the end have all turned towards the closest segment. They've turned inside the column and they've gone whatever length it needs to get to the other side. Let me once again press M twice, enter, go to the figure, longitudinal reinforcement, and detail. And the other option I have over there is by embedment length. And if I say embedment length, then I will need to give a multiplier of phi. This little picture over here tells you that embedment length can be S1 plus S2. Basically, it'll get to the boundary and then turn as well. So for example, if I say 50 phi or something as the embedment length, and I say OK, then probably those bars will turn inside. You notice this bar is going up, it's going there, and it's turning back inside because the length from here to here to here is 50 feet, 50 times the diameter of the bar itself. Let me press enter again. None of these is what I wanted. What I actually wanted was it to actually cross the boundary of the column. So let me go back inside, press the end detail. Now there's this option over here which says pass through boundary. This is the one which I want turned on, right? And what this tells us, if you notice the picture over here also tells you that this is your shape. It's going to go through the boundary and then it's going to go straight until it hits a barrier. Now you might ask what the barrier, you might ask what the barrier is. You don't need to define it. All you need to define is what is the distance between the end of your column to the barrier. So if you wanted to actually just go straight, let's say 1000, let's say 1 meter, you wanted to go straight. What you would do is, instead of embedment length, you will say by a given amount, and this is the extension length, how much it needs to go out, and it says you need to enter the extension length, which is over here. So you enter 1000 over here, but then you also give it a barrier distance, which which is this one over here, which is you need to give something which is bigger than 1000. So I'll give it 2000. Now what that means is that there's a barrier which is 2 meters away, but I only want you to go 1 meter, so it's never going to hit the barrier. If I put this number to be smaller than 1000, then it's going to go 500 up and then turn as if there's an unseen barrier over there, which I don't want. I just want it to go straight up. So all I'll do is I'll just make sure that this number is bigger than this number. And if I do that and say okay and okay, you will notice that all the bars have now extended into the other column. They belong to the bottom column, but they have just come out of the column because my end condition is to pass through the boundary. Once again, enter, sorry, go to the figure, and longitudinal reinforcement end detail. You can see there are several options we could have done. We could have done do nothing, could have done by a given amount, it would have turned within the column. If we don't want it to turn within the column and we want it to go straight, then we have to select this option of pass boundary and then give a number, how much we want it to cross the boundary, and also give a barrier distance which is bigger than that, and that will allow us to basically put the splice over, extend the bars to that point. So this is an easy way. You could do the same for the start as well. The bottom of the rebar also, you can, if you want, just by using it. I'll show you some other ways of doing it, in which you can directly select the foundation and to create starter bars, which is what we'll talk about later. But if you wanted to, you could just extend this into the foundation and then put a barrier which would be the height of the foundation, and then it will go down and it will turn after that. So there are multiple ways of doing the same thing with these macros, but this is what I wanted to show you first, that if you go inside the macro, you will have the longitudinal reinforcement button over here, and this will allow you to do whatever kind of end condition you want at the start and whatever kind of end condition you want at the end. Don't worry too much about this one. This is basically to do with the type, which is, in this case, it would be longitudinal. It's going to select it automatically. The parent type will automatically be selected as column. You don't need to do it because this macro is for columns. But these are the diameter you've already set from outside. So you will usually not need to worry about this button over here. But if you wanted to, you could change some things from there as well. But the most frequently used ones would be the start detail and the end detail, which we've already talked about. Now, since we talked about the bottom detail going into the foundation, let's do the first way in which we can do that. Let me go into my column, press shift and then click on it. And this time, if we go to the general, I want this one to be selected. Select foundation. What this will do is, if this one is ticked, it will ask for the column, and then after you select the column and right click, it will ask for the foundation, and then it will know the depth and everything, and it will use that information. But other than that, go to the starter, and you have two options. Either you can put starters, which means a separate rebar, and then the column mains, or you can embed the longitudinal rebar directly into the foundation. So there are two ways of doing it. One is to have a separate starter rebar. The other way is what I'm going to start showing you right now, is to embed the vertical rebar into the foundation. And for this one, there's an embedment detail, which is, I'm just saying, use the embedment length, whatever the bar diameter is, and take the embedment length to be 75 phi. I can make it 50 phi. I can make it whatever I want. I just wanted to make sure that it turns, so I've given it a slightly larger number. So embedment detail is given. This one is set to select foundation below, and this one is instead of choosing put starters, I'm choosing this one. Apply OK, and now I go to my column, select the column, right click, and now if you notice, doesn't immediately put the rebars, but it asks for foundation objects, and you can select more than one foundation object. In this case, it's only one, so I select this one, right click, and then it asks for other objects, and I can right click again to finish. And when I do that, you will see that the vertical rebars have gone into the foundation and they've turned. This is the same rebar which is going all the way up through into the second column. So it's not separate starter bars. This one is going all the way up. This one is going all the way up. And this is the way I have set it up basically. Now, one thing to note, it has put the bars inside, but if I look at it from the side, you will see, if I just measure this distance from the middle of the bar to the bottom of the foundation, you can see that it is 58. If you see the Z component, it's 58 millimeters. That's because the clear cover was defined as 50, and the 8 comes as half of, so this diameter is 16. Half of that is 8. So right now it's going in basically at the clear cover from the foundation. But normally these bars, normally this foundation will have its own bars as well, the main reinforcement and the second reinforcement, and these bars will need to sit on top of those. So we need, if we were to calculate exactly let's say we want to use 20 millimeter rebar over here, and 20 in the secondary direction, so that's another 40. 50 was the clear cover, so 50, then 20, 20 for the two bars, that's 90, and then the middle of that would be another 8, so that's 98. So if I want these rebars to not be 58 but be 98 from the top, if I go back, if I select these and press MM and enter, and I go back into my starter and go to the embedment detail, once again, this dialog box will come up very often, so I recommend that you watch a video on this, basically the surface macro, because all these parameters are used to do different things. And this one, this initial offset distance, this one over here, which tells you how much before the end it's going to come back. So if I just put 98 millimeters over here, you can see it from here as well. Press OK. Like that, you will see that those rebars have been lifted up a bit more now to allow for the main and secondary reinforcement of the foundation. If I were to measure from here to here, you will see the 98, which we talked about. So you have control over how much you can embed these bars into the foundation. Now, instead of actually embedding the original longitudinal rebar into the foundation, let's talk about the case where we want actually different starter bars instead of the same longitudinal one going inside. For that, we just need to go into our settings, and instead of saying embed vertical bars into the foundation, we need to choose the other option. And if you notice, if you choose this one, then this one gets unchecked, and we can set the starter details. We can say the method of starter length is multiple of bar diameter, so we want, say, 75 feet, like that. And for the detail data, once again, by embedment length, we can put in 75 over here as well. This initial distance can be 98, which we just talked about, like that. So we've set the information on that, and we've checked this one. And after doing that, if you press apply, now it's going to basically leave the original longitudinal bars where they are, but create an extra bar from the bottom. Once again, we are asking for the foundation. Apply, OK. Go into the column, select the macro, select the column, right click, select the foundation, right click once and twice to finish it. And now if you notice, it has created the starter rebars separately from the longitudinal rebars. There's an overlap over here. We can talk about how you can show them differently as well. But basically the point being that now the starter rebars are separate IDs, and this one is a separate ID which is going into the top column, like that. So now this one will get a different part mark and a rebar mark, and this the rebar above that will get a different rebar mark. Now, up till now, what we did was we worked on this column, which was a single column, and we said in the beginning that we can have two different strategies. We can either have a different column at each floor level, and then we will apply and we will ensure it goes into the second one, and then apply again for the other one. and for the other one. But sometimes we might want to have a single column going all through the 3 stories if the section is not changing. Now, in that case, we might want certain splices at certain points. So this is 5 meters, 5 meters, 5 meters. But let's say we want the first bar to continue till the middle of the second story, which is somewhere over here, 7.5 meters, and the second one to continue till 12.5 meters, and then the final bar over there. Let's say that's what we want. So we want to define some splices. So if we go back into the column macro, and we ensure first of all over here that this one is not ticked. We don't want to, because this one will automatically create splices at the intermediate joints. What is an intermediate joint? This column is going straight through, but there will be some joints over here. So if I press Alt P, you will see the intermediate joints over there. One over here, one over here. And so at those points, it's going to create automatically splices, which we don't want. We want to define the location of the splices ourselves at 7.5 meters and at 12.5 meters, let's say. So we go back inside, we make sure this one is not selected, and then we go to the joint splices over here. We click on that. Now, I've already done that, but so what I'll do is I'll delete these and show it to you from scratch. So when you open it, normally it will have nothing in it. And what you can do is you can say add splice point, and you can add a level. So you can say add a splice at 7,500. You can give the data. You can say the method of splice is distance, and the splice amount is a multiple of phi, 50 phi, let's say, like that. I think this is enough. 7,500, that's okay. And then you add another one at 12,500. Once again, the data can be, this one can be distance, and this one can be a multiple of the diameter, like that. That is fine. That's okay. Okay, so now I've entered 2 splice points over here, one at 7,500, one at 12,500, and I can say okay. Those are defined now in the settings. And the rest is all the same. No stirrups, no cross ties, no. The starter one it's putting starters for the foundation. That's fine. Say apply, and let's say okay. And now if I go and select the macro, and I select this column, which is going through the entire 3 stories, and I right click, and then it asks for the foundation. So I can select this foundation, right click, and one final right click to finish the macro. And you will see that we've got the starter bars, and then we've got the first longitudinal bar. And the first longitudinal bar is getting a splice at 7,500 at that point. And then another longitudinal bar is continuing after that, and that one is getting a splice at 12,500, this level over here. And then the final bar is going out because my end condition was to cross the boundary. That's the default I have inside. I can change that. But you can notice that in a single go, I can define if I've got a 4-story or a 5-story building in which the column, let's say the only requirement is that the column cross section needs to be this. Obviously, if it's a single column, then the cross section will be the same. So in those cases, you can define it. You can define the reinforcement till that section is the same, and then you can easily apply the splices at whatever points. And for the continuation for the rest of the structure, you can apply the macros again and again. So very convenient way of creating your own splices. Obviously at a point of your choosing, because this point was defined by the user. And if you don't want these, if you want, in addition, if you also select this one, apply splice at intermediate points, it's going to automatically add. So we've chosen 2 points, 7,500 and 12,500. But if this one was selected, then what it would do is it would automatically add 2 other splice points, one at 5,000 and one at 10,000. So then you'll have 4 splices, one at 5,000, one at 7,500, one at 10,000, and one at 12,500, which is not what you want. If you want to, that would only be the case in which you leave your splices empty, and let's just tell it to put its own splices at the beginning of every story. Usually that's not the way it's done, because you want the splices at a point where the moment diagram of the column has your minimum value. So it's somewhere in the middle of the column, or depending on whatever standard you're using, it could be the 1/3, middle third, or something like that. But the idea being that you can, just by going into the settings, you can go to joint splices and you can enter your splice levels, and those will be applied to the column. Now that we have discussed longitudinal rebars in detail, and we've talked about how to put longitudinal rebars in a single column, which is going from story to story. We've also talked about how you can put them in columns which are going across multiple stories. We've talked about splicing them. We've talked about putting different diameters at the corner and different diameters at the other sides, basically having control over which one is which, the spacings, and removing the first and last. So basically you will use the same, we've done a simple case, but you will be using the same ideas to, for example, even for something like this, you can put your longitudinal rebars all along the sides, and then make sure if you want more on this side, and you use the parameters which I just showed you, or a T column or something, or an L column or anything like that. The polygon column will basically work for all those cases. So now let's move on to adding stirrups. So I'm going to use this case in which the column is going across multiple stories. Let's look at it from the top. We've got a foundation in there as well. We go to my, press the shift key, click on the column so that the settings open. And this time we will select this one, generate the stirrups manually. And over here, we will make sure that the put stirrups option is turned on. Now, normally when you have this one turned on, and it's a square column, it's gonna put the square stirrup around the bars. But obviously this is a polygon reinforcement, polygon column reinforcement macro. So the cases could be much harder. Like I said, they could be it could be something like this, for example. So how do you put a stirrup in this? Maybe you want a stirrup going in like this. Maybe you want a stirrup around here, and maybe you want some extra stirrups as well. So, or a T column, once again, could have its own special requirements. An L column might have its own requirements. So once those cases get complicated, that's why we have this option of generate your stirrups manually, in which you actually tell the program where and how you want the stirrups. So you turn this on, and in the figure one, you make sure this one is turned on, because that overrides everything. And with that, basically everything else is the same. Let me just do that, say apply, okay. And I'm going to select my macro, select the column, right click, select the foundation, right click, and right click again to finish the foundation selection. But this time you will see that it doesn't immediately finish. It's still asking for something, but it's put the longitudinal bars, but the macro is not ended. It's asking me something which is in the bottom left over here. It says select a rebar for stirrups. Now let's say I want two stirrups. I want one to go like that, and I want the other one to go like this one, like that, right? So the first one will be between this bar, this bar, this bar, and this bar. So I'm going to just go like that. I'm going to go like that, select that bar, select this bar, and select this bar. Now it's basically asking me for 4 bars, and I've finished the first 4 bars. If I right click now, it's going to just create the single stirrup, which around those bars. But if I don't right click and I continue and select a 5th bar, it's going to tell it that I want to put more stirrups. So I'm going to select the 5th bar, and the moment I do that, it finishes the first one. And then it asks for, so I've already selected the 5th one. I'll continue selecting the 6th one, and the 7th one, and the 8th one. And if I choose the 9th one now, then it's going to create this one and continue with the 3rd stirrup. I don't have that. I'm just going to right click to finish. And when I do that, it basically finishes the macro. It puts my stirrups. It puts my starter bars separately. I've got my stirrups coming in all the way till the start of the foundation. This is where my stirrups are starting. And if you notice, there are regions, once again, the first confinement region, the second region, the middle region, and then this one over here. And then there is another one, there's this region over here, which is going through the beams. I can have some control over that. Then I've got, so it recognizes where the second floor starts because of the beam connection. It's already put the second stirrup over there, the midsection, then the top one, and then this one, and so on and so forth. And if you remember, if you go back into the macro settings, we had these distances over here. So we had this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one, these 4 areas we could specify. So this one is basically for, this setting works for both these last 2. And this one is for the mid region, and this one is for the end region, where you can basically specify. So the S means stirrup and the C means cross tie. We are not entering cross ties at the moment. We're just putting stirrups. So I've just asked it to put, for example, Phi8 at 150 millimeter for this region, then Phi8 at 300 millimeters for the middle region, and then Phi8 at 150 for these 2 regions over there. And I can specify the distances separately over there as well. But basically that's the input. And if you notice, if you come down over here, the bottom first stirrup starts exactly at the end of the column over here. It doesn't extend into the foundation. And if I wanted to do that, I can just press MM again to open my column dialog box. And if I come to the general one, you will see that there is an option to extend stirrups and cross ties into the foundation. So if I turn this on, I can also select an extension distance. So since the foundation is about 500 millimeters high, the height of the foundation, I can perhaps give it something like 350. And with this one checked, if I say OK, my stirrups will now go down 350 millimeters. The first one, the first set, which was normally from here to here, is now from the bottom of the foundation till that point. So in one quick way, one easy way, I was able to create complicated stirrups. And like I said, if I was doing something like a T column or an L column or a column like this, I could select as many sets of 4 bars to create my my stirrups the way I wanted to. Now the same logic holds for cross ties as well. So let me just look at it from the top once again. This is our column, the foundation. Let me go and press Shift, open this up. I can say generate stirrups manually like I did, and I can also say generate cross ties manually. And just go to the figure and make sure this one is also turned on so that the cross tie creation is activated. And I can just say apply after this and say OK. And now if I click on the icon, select my column, right click, select the foundation, right click twice. When I do that, I get my longitudinal rebars on the screen. Now it's asking me for the stirrups. So this time I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then right click because I don't want the second stirrup. I want to put cross ties over there. So I right click, and when I do that, it stops asking for the stirrups now. It creates them, and now it starts asking for the cross ties. And for the cross ties, it asks, instead of 4, it asks for 2 rebars. So I can select this one and this one, and immediately it's going to put a cross tie. And then I can either right click to finish, or I can select this one and this one, and it's going to put another cross tie. And now if I say right click, it's going to finish the macro. And once again, we have the same thing. We can extend this into the foundation if you want to, but we have all our stirrups and our cross ties, as you can see. Now they're modeled like this with clashes. That's not a problem because in the drawings, this is the way we want. We can of course modify them. We can move them out of each other's range and stuff like that. But it's usually not recommended because then that creates, if you look at it from the side, it will create lots of double cross ties, double stirrups, etc. And you can do it if that's what you want, but a clean drawing, a clean column drawing, you want just single lines, for example, at each stirrup level rather than multiple lines and all that. In fact, you don't even want to show the cross ties in your this view of the column in the column drawing. But this is, like I said, it will vary from person to person. You have both options. You can modify the ranges, for example, for this cross tie. If you wanted to, you could select this one and you pull the range back a bit so that they don't clash. But it's an extra effort, and it's not even needed for the quality of the drawings. So with the same way in which we created stirrups, we have also managed to create cross ties. And once again, this ability will be useful when you're dealing with something like this, in which you will want to show exactly where you want your cross ties. Maybe you want 2 over here and 2 over here and 1 over here, and then some stirrups as well. So an arbitrary configuration of cross ties and stirrups. But with this method of creation of your column rebars, you can easily do practically anything which you want. Now, a small tip, if you remember when we were putting the longitudinal rebars, they would go through the entire length of the column. But there's a parameter, if I press Shift and open up the dialog box, I've reverted this back to don't create the stirrups and cross ties because I don't want to create them. The only difference, and I've removed these two as well. Now, if you come back to the general one, this is something we didn't talk about. So normally it would be over here. Placement range would be the whole column. So when you select the column, your longitudinal bars and stirrups will be created across the entire column. But you don't have to do that. You can even put your longitudinal rebars and stirrups only not across the entire length of the column, but let's say from here to here, only a part of the column. So to do that, if you select this one, then it will ask for the column, and after it asks for the column, it's going to ask for 2 points, so which you need to have created on the screen, because it unfortunately at this point it actually asks for physical points. So you need to create the points before you use it. You can't use the direct entry, for example, by saying DZ 1000 or something like that. You need to physically create the points and move them to where you need them to be. But once you do that, you can click on the icon, select the column and right click, and now it's asking for the start joints or points. And then you can just say, for example, over here, start one, and it asks for the end one, and then you can click on this one. And when you do that, you see that it is now created your longitudinal bars only in that range. So this even gives you a little more flexibility how you can use, because don't forget, you can keep applying the same macro to the same column again and again. So even if you have some extra bars in the middle for whatever reason, I'm just saying some special requirement, and some bars are going continuously and some bars are only in a particular range, for example, where for maybe the tensile force is bigger or something. But let's say you have such a situation, you can actually put your longitudinal bars and stirrups and cross ties and everything only in a particular range as well. One final word, which is of course valid for all macros in COMOSYS, that because concrete is such a repetitive affair in the sense that you're most probably putting reinforcement in 500 by 500 columns or 600 by 600 columns or 30 or 300 by 300 columns, and you keep those sizes keep coming up. And so what you can do is you can always once you do your settings, you can always save away all your settings in your presets. And you can have, for example, a 500 by 500 column or 600 by 600 column, and you can even have load levels. So for example, a 500 by 500 column, low load level or medium load level or high load level, for example, or full capacity design or something. You can save away those presets with different sizes, and then instead of doing all these selecting all these parameters every time, you just apply a column macro and then you select the preset and reapply it, and basically that's it. And that your company settings for the 500 by 500 fully loaded column will be applied automatically. So that's a general recommendation for all COMOSYS macros, but it also works for the column, a polygon column reinforcement macro.